So many things I struggled with, so many things. I can remember struggling with leadership. You know, I was, 21, 22 when I had my first team, and I'd never had a team before.
Do you find yourself winging your way through life, hoping you'll figure it all out on the way? Hello, it's me, Gaby Mendes, your 20s wing woman, and you're listening to the Talk Twenties podcast. Here you'll find me chatting to influential 20-somethings on different topics that matter to you in your 20s and all the things we never got taught in school. This is your ultimate guide to adult life. So if you're ready, let's go. Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of the Talk Twenties podcast. Today I'm joined in the studio by Hannah Anderson. Hannah was the co-founder of Social Chain and now is a managing director at Kyma Media. I'm so excited to invite her into the studio today to talk all about leadership in your 20s. So hello, Hannah.
Hello.
Thanks for coming into the studio.
Thank you so much for having me.
I'm so excited to chat to you because you have probably one of the most interesting backstories and craziness that has happened in your 20s that I think we've ever really had on the podcast.
Yeah, it's been a whirlwind.
Yeah, it has. You're 29 at the minute,
yes.
But your 20s have kind of catapulted you into a really crazy place that you probably never expected to be.
Ever in the world expected to be where I was. Never even had considered, business or anything like this when I was younger. I from being 5 years old, I wanted to be a primary school teacher. From my very first day of primary school, I walked in and I had this most amazing Miss Honey style teacher, and I was like, I want to be like that. And from then on, up until the age of 20 really, I was dead set on becoming a primary school teacher. It was just when this kind of new world of social media kind of came along that I just got really interested in it and almost accidentally kind of fell into this world of social and have been very, very, very lucky to have kind of timed it right and met the right people and be here where I am today. Yeah.
It's an amazing story and one that I think is, quite inspirational. So if we take our listeners back to Hannah at 20, where was Hannah at 20?
So Hannah at 20 was studying at Northumbria University to become a primary school teacher. So I was I had a year out in between, sixth form and uni, worked at Sainsbury's on night shift, good times. And then, so at 20, I would have been in my first or second year, trained to be a primary school teacher, which, like I said, was my passion, was something that I wanted to do for such a long time. But if you imagine at this time, it's 2012. And it's at this point where social is really starting to take off. So over the past, 5, 6, 7 years, you've had things like MySpace crop up, you've had things like Facebook crop up. Twitter's relatively new. Twitter's maybe only 3 or 4 years old. And I had been very into social since being in sixth form. So, 16, 17 years old, I made my very first social media page on Facebook, about something that at the time and still to this day I'm very passionate about, which is sandwiches. So my first ever Facebook page, and it's still there, and it's kind of a stream of my 16-year-old consciousness, is called I Could Always Do With a Good Sandwich, and it got 2,000 likes.
That's nice.
And I was absolutely buzzing. So I had this sandwich page, was just inviting all my friends at sixth form to like it, and people were like, Hannah, will you please stop inviting us to your sandwich page, you absolute freak. But I loved it and I thought it was great, and if I got 10 likes on a post about me having a ham and cheese toastie that day, that was the greatest feeling in the world. Went off to uni to become a teacher, and Twitter kind of came along, and I was so fascinated by it because I saw people normal kids in their bedrooms with 50, 60, 70, 80,000 followers. And I was like, how are they getting that many followers? That's insane. And I was like, I want to give it a try. So I gave it a try. And what I'd do at the very start was I'd manually follow 1,000 people every single day. Literally scrolling through Twitter, just following people. Because I knew if you were to follow 1,000 people, you likely get maybe 20% back. So you get 200 followers back. And over maybe the course of a year, gained about 30,000 followers. And it was at that point that I kind of realised, like, even though I've got these followers, people don't give a shit about me. Like, people don't care about me. Like, I'm just a kid. So I started tweeting about things that I thought, you know, people on Twitter cared about. So I kind of flipped that account to a One Direction fan account, which, yeah, going back, that kind of made me a One Direction stan still to this day. But anyway, I started to realise, like, people don't care about me. People care about themselves. So I thought, what do people care about? One Direction, that was one thing. I was like, what do I care about that other people care about? Harry Potter. So I made a Harry Potter page. It was called Hogwarts Logic. I just posted like silly like things and, you know, jokes about Harry Potter, puns, like Harry Potter facts, things like that. That blew up. I had a page about The Sims, which is, you know, a huge game. I loved playing The Sims. I've played The Sims since I was little. Huge game, massive fandom online. That was Sims Logic. That was kind of, you know, obviously The Sims is a game about human life. So it's obviously it's flawed in it, you know, in its logic. So that was funny. Again, that got about 100,000 followers in a couple of weeks. And then the biggest one,
100,000 followers in a couple of weeks. I have to interject there. Like how? I mean, obviously, I feel like you were really targeting in on your niche there. You were like, I love this and I'm so passionate about it, but I know there's other people who share that common ground. Yeah. And do you think that's why it blew up?
100%. And you've got to remember, I'd spent the past year building this base of, you know, maybe 30, 40,000 followers on my personal account. So what I had was a springboard to launch all of these accounts off. And then the more accounts that I started to build, the more of a springboard I had. So I would, you know, once Hogwarts Logic was to a certain size, and you know, I started Sims Logic or whatever, I could retweet one onto the other and you know, springboard them. Also, once you've got those amount of followers, there's other people in the space who want to do the same. So you know, it was a case of like, oh, I'll retweet you if you retweet me, and that again kind of built everything up off of there. So but yeah, I think obviously content is king. You can't just, like I said, you can't just post anything and expect to blow up because no one cares. The biggest account, I suppose, the one that kind of drove the most hype at the time, was an account called Primary School Problems. So I was still in university. I was, you know, trained to be a teacher, so I was going on placement all the time. I was going into school in, you know, year one and nursery and things like that. And I was seeing things that in school that I remember from when I was in school. And I was like, this would make a brilliant Twitter page. And that one, like,
can I just say, I didn't actually know that was you, but I know exactly the page that you're referring to. And when you just said that, I was like, oh my God, was that you? Because I retweeted
it had a plimsoll as the logo. Yeah.
How did I not even know that it was you that was behind that? I knew about Sims Logic, I knew about Hogwarts, but I didn't know that was you. And I used to obsess over that page. I used to look at every single post and be like, that's hilarious because it's so true. Yeah. And I think obviously I did the same as you. So I studied education at university, like with, you know, plans to go off and be a teacher. Obviously, like you, didn't end up sticking to that. But like, I remember seeing that and thinking it was hilarious, and everyone on my course thought the same. And I'm sure lots of people in the UK could have related to that. You've just blown my mind. I've just been sat here for like 5 minutes chatting to you. But I can't believe that all of this has led you to where you are today, because it made sense. It kind of took your primary school direction off like in a way different path, didn't it?
Yeah, very, very different path. Very different path. It's wild to think about, because, and I think what the best thing about it is like, I started this out as a passion, and I haven't lost that passion, like, which is, you know, it's a very lucky situation to be in, a very privileged position to be in. So it's great. Again, like I said, a lot of it came down to luck. So I had all of these pages. I was still, you know, training to be a primary school teacher. I told nobody on my course. I kept it a secret, because I was so worried that, like, if one of the lecturers found out that, like, I was tweeting about, like, these stupid things, like, they'd be like, right, you're kicked out. But I told nobody. But luckily, it was Dom actually who DM'd me on one of my pages. It must have been like end of summer 2013, so late 2013. And he said, like, the message read, "Hey man, love the pages. Would like to talk to you about an opportunity. Hey man," because I was facelessly didn't know, that I was female, and at the time, and people who were building pages were predominantly male. But and I was like, cool, yeah, like let's have a chat. So Steve and Dom, at the time,
just to jut in there. So we're talking about Stephen Bartlett, who's currently in Dragon's Den.
Yeah, so Steve,
the youngest dragon in the Dragon's Den, and Don McGregor, who were your co-founders from Social Chain.
Yes, yes. So these again at the time they were kids. Like they are both younger than me. Steve's about 6 months younger than me, and Dom is exactly a year younger than me. So Dom's like a year and 3 days younger than me or something like that. But yeah, they were both kids at the time. And again, now you look at them and you think, bloody hell, like what they've done in their 20s is phenomenal. But they offered me, so I must have had maybe, I can't remember exactly, but maybe like 400,000 or 500,000 followers at this point, maybe a bit more. They offered me £1,500 for the pages that I had. And at the time, like I'd never, ever seen that amount of money in my life. Think, even when I worked at Sainsbury's, I'd come home every month with about 800 quid because I was a kid. Even though I worked night shift, but even to me then that was a lot of money. And £1,500
I'm sure a lot of people listening to this would say that, was that's huge.
Was huge money. And I was like, oh my God, like I've never seen that amount of money, like never, couldn't even like fathom what that would do for me at the time. I was a student, like that would have lasted me like 6 months. Again, luckily I was living at my dad's, so I had very little like expenditure to pay him, but like I had a student loan coming in, and like I was like, oh my God, like this is gonna change everything. But I also knew that what I had was worth a lot more than £1,500. I didn't think it was worth like what it actually was. I was probably like, oh, if they'd offered me 10, I probably would have taken it. Do you know what I mean? But like, Social Chain we didn't have a. I think Steve had an idea, a name idea. So they'd basically been building pages for Steve's previous business, Wallpark, which was kind of like an online student notice board. And then they'd left when they realised that the value wasn't in the website, the value was in the pages that they built. So we came together, started kind of continuing to build these pages, and I went and meet them in the February of 2014. So early February 2014, I went and I met them. And I remember the taking us to, what's it called in Manchester, in the Hilton, it's like one of the bars that are really high up anyways. And I was like, oh my God, I was there in my like £14 dress from like wherever it was from, H&M, and like these little pumps. Honestly, I looked ridiculous, but I was like, wow, this is like insane. Is this the potential for my life? And bear in mind, like they didn't have anything back then. They were just kind of putting on a bit of a show. We literally stayed in one of their friends' mum's flats, like, and like no wonder my mum and dad were like, "Oh my God, you're going to Manchester by yourself to meet these two strangers." Because when I arrived at their like friend's mum's flat, I was like, "So like we're not staying in like a hotel or anything." Like I had no problem with it, but I was with like these two strange boys off the internet. So yeah, I met them then, and then we were just kind of, like I said, building, growing. They tried to convince me to drop out of university, but I was like, no, I'm 3 years in, like I've only got a couple of months left. At that point, I don't think any of us really knew what the potential was. I especially was really like worried about throwing this career away and all of this. But it was in the April of the 2014 that we really kind of understood like what the power that we had was with the communities and the pages that we'd built. So we basically we partnered with this app called Tippy Tap, and it was one of those apps like where it's like similar to piano tiles. So you like you avoid the white tiles or whatever you have to do, and we partnered with them to kind of get them downloads, and instead, I've got the messages on Facebook somewhere, but I asked Dom, I was like, oh, what's the link? And he was like, Dom Genius was like, no, let's not post a link. And then what I said was, let's tell people not to download it. So we went live across, at the time, we maybe had about 20 Twitter pages. Dom on Student Problems would say, like, do not download Tippy Tap, you'll ruin your degree. Like, you'll fail your degree. Like, on Sims Logic, I'd put something, like, in this format that I would write, but, like, do not download Tippy Tap, or, like House on Fire downloads Tippy Tap. Like, stuff like that. And in 2 weeks, we got Tippy Tap 2 million downloads.
That's crazy.
And then at that point, we were all like, we might actually have something here. And that was the birth of Social Chain kind of becoming something, real.
If you could go back to that time, what made you know that it was the right decision?
I don't know, just this, like, unrelenting belief that it was, like, powerful and worthwhile. I think from that moment on, from the moment that we got that many downloads for Tippy Tap, I was like, if we can do this for an app, like, who else can we do this for? Also, like, Steve had, very, like, unrelenting belief that, like, this is going to do well, Same with Dom, and those guys were amazing at that point, kind of reassuring me. I think because they'd had a bit of experience in business for maybe the past year or whatever it was with them. They were a bit more kind of understanding than I was. But yeah, I just knew it was weird, and it was especially like in the September after uni, when my, like, friends started going to their teaching jobs, and it was at that point that we were co-sharing a space in London, and we were going down every Monday to London on the train, sharing an Airbnb and coming home every Friday, and like I was like, this is such a direction that I didn't think I was going in, whilst all my teacher friends were, teaching their reception class, or,
Did you ever did you ever have not any regrets, but in that moment in time, like, did you ever wonder, like, what if, or were you did you kind of just look at this point and be like, no, I know this is the right direction for me? I think a lot of 20-somethings experience that, where they're kind of like, they've taken a path, but they're looking at what everyone else is doing, and they're like, if I'd taken that path, where would I be?
Yeah,
sort of thing.
I think I did a little bit at that time, but on the other hand, like, it was so exciting. It was so exciting to be like, going down to London and doing this and working with these people and all of this. And yes, it was hard, but I don't think I ever, like, really questioned it. I mean, with summer holidays, I would have loved to retain those, like, your 6 weeks off or good times. But no, teachers deserve those. I don't deserve those holidays, for sure. So, but no, I don't think there was. I think, like, my parents and people around me were a bit worried, but I don't think I was. And I think it was, like, almost like this, like, young naivety that, like, of course it's going to do well. Of course it is. And obviously not all businesses do well, but at the time was like, trust me. Like, I remember people being like, well, no, like, you need to get a proper job, or like, and this is at the time that, like, in the summer before, like, between when I'd finished uni and, like, when we'd start going down to London and things like that, where I would literally sit at home all day on my laptop, and obviously to my dad or, whoever, that would just look like I was playing around on my laptop, and I was like, no, like, I promise, like, I'm doing stuff here. But that at that point, like, I was earning nothing really. I was earning, I think it's like 500 or 600 quid a month ish. So I can see why it was like, no, you need to, like, get a job. And I was like, no, like, this is my job.
Having to convince them.
Yeah. But now, obviously, they're the most proud people in the world, and they're very, very thankful.
Like, I knew it. I knew you'd do it.
Yeah, I knew it would do as well. Yeah.
So, Social Chain, obviously, it never just stayed you, Dom, and Stephen. It very, very, very quickly grew. And you ended up at one stage managing a team of 750 or having 750 in the organisation. Can you talk us a little bit through that scale and how you felt as a 20-something going through a scale up of a company of that size? Because you were there from the very, very start.
It was an unreal experience. Because we were all 20-somethings. Sometimes we were 20-somethings and 18 and 19-year-olds, and like we were all just having an absolute blast. It was like university, but like you've got a job while you're doing it. Like it was such a phenomenon. Like I can't describe like the experience of that. Like to have so many young people all kind of striving towards one goal and all celebrating, you know, these amazing wins and everything like that. And obviously with that came a lot of difficulty and, you know, like struggles. Some people, I think it got too much for some people. You know, you have people who joined at a certain point where it was, say, maybe 10 people. And then when it got to 20 or 30, it changes really quickly. And a lot of people struggle with adapting to that because you have, you know, your life is one thing where you come into work, it's a family every day. And then, you know, 6 months to a year later, you come in and you don't talk to the people who you used to talk to because it's grown beyond that. And that, I think that was difficult for some people. And yeah, it was difficult for me. I think initially, I found it hard to like find my people, like to find, because everyone was young but had different, you know, hobbies and things like that. And as we grew, I kind of found that, and I got a lot like happier there. But I think initially I was good at my job, obviously, but I felt like a bit of an outsider up until we got to a point where like we were, you know, becoming more and more diverse. Like I was like the only female for a while, and then like more females obviously as we grew. You know, it got to a point where there was more females. But yeah, I struggled with that a little bit. And I struggled with so many things. I struggled with so many things. I can remember struggling with leadership. For one, you know, I was 21, 22 when I had my first team, and I'd never had a team before. Like that was scary, and I just had to like learn how to do it. And like I remember there was one time, there must have been maybe about 10 or 12 of us in Social Chain at this time, and I had maybe a team of like 3 or 4, maybe some like people who like worked from home as well. So I had a small team, and I remember being petrified because one of my team members who worked in the office would come in late every day, would start at 11. And I remember thinking like, God, I'm going to have to tell him, and being so scared for that meeting to tell someone that, you know, that they needed to come in on time. And I was like, why am I the scared one? Yeah. But like I was so not confident, like so like scared of like leadership. But I think that kind of just chucking myself in the deep end and learning how to do it like helped me so much in like building my confidence, building an understanding of like people, and getting to like where I am today. But like, yeah, it was, I struggled a lot. I still, something I still struggle with, and I've struggled with the whole time, is like, I'm like an empath. I feel like that word's been thrown around a lot recently, you know, on social and things like that. But I am, and it's fundamentally why I think I'm good at social, is because I can put myself in other people's shoes. Yeah. On the flip side of that, I put myself in other people's shoes without wanting to sometimes. So that I really struggle, and I still do. I've got better at it. I really struggle with like giving people like negative feedback or like even constructive feedback. I find hard because I feel bad for them, and I feel like, oh God, they're gonna be, you know, be sad at this, or like or not take this well or anything like that.
Do you think it's like there's quite an emotional tie to that as well? Like, you know, you don't want to, you feel quite emotionally invested, especially when you create something from the beginning because it's out of love. So you created all those pages because you just loved the things that you were talking about, and you obviously cared so passionately about that. And I think it's probably then very hard to, in any of those situations, you're putting yourself into someone else's shoes who you probably think, well, I've come into this with so much emotion and love and passion, then I kind of think that you care just as much as me. And if you care as much as me, how would I feel if I was in that situation?
Yeah, it's definitely that. It's like how I describe it is, you know, if you've ever seen The Green Mile, I think he's called John. He's the big guy who basically can like take on or feel other people's pain.
Yeah.
Like that's how I feel, and it's like in situations like that, or in situations, you know, where we've had to let someone go, or there's been redundancies, or whatever it might be. Like I will get home and my body will literally shut down because I'm like, it's almost like my brain's like disassociating with it because I can literally feel everything, and it kills me, and that's something that I will struggle with for a long, long time.
Were your other co-founders the same in that, or do you think they had different experiences?
I think very different, and I think that's why it worked. I know Steve's very different to Dom, and I'm very different to both of them. But I don't know. I'm not sure. You know what's.
Obviously, you've got to where you are today, so you must have used that emotional tie and empathy and stuff like that to your strengths at times.
100%.
How did you kind of use it to get ahead in leadership, or to really understand how you could be a good leader?
I think what that does is it makes me, you know, it makes me lead by example. It makes me, you know, want to get my hands dirty to show people that, like, I'm not just going to tell you what to do. I'll do it, and I'll work with you. I think. Well, I hope anyway that people who've worked with me like really respect me and really respect that, like, I genuinely give a crap about them. Like if they are having a bad day, or if they, you know, are struggling with their mental health or anything like that, like that they can come and talk to me because I genuinely care about them. And then on you know, as well as that, I genuinely care about like their progression and like them doing well in their careers. Like that's what drives me. It's not the, you know, it's not the money, it's not, you know, it's not anything like that. What drives me is like, oh yes, I get to give this person a promotion today because they've hit all their KPIs, and like that's going to make them so happy, and then I'll go home and I'll be like, yay. So there's the positives and the negatives of it, but 100% no, it definitely I just care about people a lot. I just do, and it has its downsides, and it definitely has its upsides.
Do you think that you would, if you hadn't got approached by Dom, do you think you would have ever looked to monetize your platform and use it in a way on your own, or do you think that it was just an opportunity that opened a new door for you?
I think I would have monetized it. So I did monetize it very, very like small amounts before before they met. So there was like these websites where you could like put links on your page, and if you got clicks and stuff like that. But
like affiliate based.
I think I would have, like, you know, reached out to companies and things like that. But I don't think I would have ever got to the point where I am now. Because I'm just not that. Well, I wasn't that kind of person. I think me now, if that happened to me now, and I have all this experience, then yes, 100%. But at that point, like, I just wasn't. I didn't even know what like business was. I wouldn't have had a clue. I was never ever driven to start a business. Whereas you look at Stephen, he wanted to start a business from when he was 5.
Yeah.
I wanted to be a teacher when I was 5.
Yeah.
But the world was very closed to me. It was very, very closed. You know, I think you look at where I grew up, Washington, northeast of England, like there wasn't there wasn't anything like that. It was like you're either a teacher, or you go into like medicine, or like I just didn't even know that things like this, like that businesses, or I didn't even know like marketing companies existed. That's how naive I was. Like I was very much I think the opportunity came along, and I'm glad that I took it. And it took a lot for me to take that opportunity. It really, really did, because it was like scary and like obviously
the
like,
unknown and
the unknown, yeah. But I just had this inkling that like what I had was something special. Like no one else had. No one else in my friendship group, no one else I knew did what I did. Yeah. So I was like, there's something here.
Talking about having your friendship group around you and kind of the people you surrounded yourself with, how has that impacted your life? Because I know from doing my research and stuff like that you believe that obviously who you surround yourself with is ultimately who you end up being like, and, you know, it has got you to where you are today. How has, you know, transforming your circle to a lot of people who wanted to be teachers just like you, to kind of people who were business minded, and I'm sure there were lots of different people that you've met along the way. How has that impacted you?
I would say every kind of phase has impacted me a lot, but I would like to think that I've retained every like phase of my life in terms of like people around me. So I'm still best friends with my friendship group from school, like best friends. We have a WhatsApp group, we talk every single day. We went away for New Year, best friends. They are the most wonderful group of people, who, like, my best friend was in the army, but she's now a firefighter. I have one friend who is a physician's associate, like a pharmacist. One of my friends is a manager at McDonald's, so
they've all gone in completely different directions, but you've all stayed really close.
Stayed so close, and like, if I ever lose that, I will like really hate myself for that. If I ever lose that group of people, number one, and also that like that Washington, northeast of England. If I ever lose my accent, if I ever like, I will like, honestly, I am so proud of like where I come from, who my friends are, and like I love that so much, and I'll retain that for the rest of my life. And if I don't, then I'll look back and I'll be like, you stupid person, because I will hate myself for it. And then obviously you move the teacher friends at uni, still are in touch with them, maybe not as much because I haven't, you know, spent as much time with them. And as you grow and like, life's hard, it's hard to keep in touch with so many people because you've only got a certain amount of time. And obviously I'm in Manchester and they're majority in the northeast, but I love them all. I saw them at a wedding over the summer, which was amazing. And then you move into like the work people, and again, I've made absolute friends for life, and so many people have taught me so much. I remember my friend Charlotte, who is business director at Social Change, was maybe about number 25 or 30. I remember learning so much from her. Like, I used to be so shy in like meetings. There's no way I could have done this, you know, 7 years ago, sat in front of a microphone and spoken like this. And Charlotte is so confident in the way that she speaks. She can pick up a phone and she can solve every single problem that there is. She can sit and speak in any room in front of anyone. Learned that from her, but also learned, you know, how to be an amazing friend. She's fantastic. Like, there's so many people along the way that I've like learned from, and like, whether that's personal or professional, like Steve, for example, getting up on stage and just being able to be confident and speak. But also in terms of business from Steve, like, he is probably like the opposite of me in terms, maybe not the opposite, but he knows how to get around that, like worrying too much about people. Like, he will protect the standard of work because he knows that that's his job, and it almost has to put like those like emotions second. So I've learned that from him.
I've watched a video of him recently where he said he looks on his business decisions like he's watching a video game. And he looks at like what the best next step would be for the business. And I think that's a really good way of taking your emotions out of the situation and going, right, actually, what is the best next step for me as a business owner? And I think that's hard when you're so invested in something like that. It's hard to like take that step away and disconnect yourself from the emotional side of things.
And I admire him for that. Obviously it's hard at the time, and it's something that I need to work on. But again, on the flip side of that, that's why I have done what I've done, is because I do have that like that empathy that people think, but it is a weakness that I do flag. Whereas Steve can, there was times where Steve had to let his best friend go from social chain. And
we've had Ash on the podcast actually.
Do you know what I mean? Like Steve had to let Ash go.
Yeah.
Like I wouldn't have been able to do that.
No.
Especially not then. Maybe now.
And they're still best friends now. They're still best friends now. So
exactly.
obviously it didn't end badly,
and it was the best thing for the business at the time. And Ash will say that. Ash will say 100% he did on the podcast.
He said it was he needed that.
But there's no way I could. I would have. At the time, I would have buggered that up.
Yeah.
Really badly. But now, because I'm more aware. And I'm more aware that is one of my flaws. I think I would be able to do that.
I think that you're saying self-awareness is key.
Yeah.
You've flagged that. Maybe earlier on in your 20s, you would have felt all of these things, but not been able to maybe label it or even identify it in your behavior. But I think what you've kind of learned and shown from chatting on this podcast is that you can clearly identify that has negatively impacted you in certain ways in your life, and it's not got you to the solutions that you've needed. And so you're now actively thinking when you're taking next steps, is this something that's holding me back in this decision? And I think that's the whole part of this conversation is, leadership in your 20s. How on earth do you go about it? And I think the answer probably is being extremely self-aware.
100%. 100%. Yeah, self-awareness is a huge thing. Huge thing. I think as well what's helped me with that is like therapy, in like learning myself, in understanding my behaviours and in understanding my flaws, massively helped. I would recommend therapy to anyone. So I never thought I would need therapy, but then kind of 2 massive traumatic events happened and I ended up, needing it. But regardless of dealing with those events, it's also helped me deal with things like, wearing my heart on my sleeve, things like, in work, putting too much pressure on myself, or, worrying that I'm letting people down if I've, I don't know, not done something right, or like not being able to sleep if I'm worrying about a person, or things like that. Like therapy has just been absolutely phenomenal for me. And I would absolutely regardless of if you think you need it or not, like it just helps you understand like everything about yourself.
It unlocks a whole different part.
100%. There's been times in therapy where I've literally just been like, whoa, I never knew that. And the therapist is like, just ask me a question, and like this like memory or thought or feeling that I've never thought about before has come to the front of my mind, and I'm like, what the like, it is insane. It's so good.
I think one of the things I really want to talk to you about as well is obviously coming from a teaching background. How do you feel the education system is set up for today's young people? Because I think that's a huge conversation.
Horrendously. The education system is so flawed to the point, and obviously it's been like 10 years since I was in uni, so it might have changed. Obviously I've kept it. I don't think it has, but to the point where in universities on teaching courses, our lecturers were saying things like, oh, the government says this, but however, if you can get away with it, do it like this. And it's like, of course they're saying that because you want what's best for the kids, and like it is just in no way, shape or form set up to nurture kids in
We're also seeing a generation, and I don't know how you feel about this, we're also seeing a generation of kids that are growing up on TikTok, right? Or Snapchat, or whatever it is that they use. And they're becoming creators themselves. There might be, 13, 14-year-olds creating incredible pages like you created when you were younger. And they're kind of getting this following, like this kind of, mass kind of viral videos and things like that. Our education system has pretty much, like, it is not set up to kind of encourage or nurture or
protect.
Yeah, exactly.
There is, and did my TED talk on this about like how the education system and, you know, people of the older generations are scared of it, are scared of social media, and you know, rightfully so. There's some crappy things on social, and obviously like there's the whole thing about like, you know, kids comparing themselves to models on Instagram and things like that. There's a lot of like, there's a lot of negativity, but for that, the worst possible thing to do is to shy away from it, because it's not going away. It's accelerating at the speed of light, and like we just have to accept it. But with accepting it comes education, comes, you know, things like teaching kids how to use it, how to protect themselves from feeling like X or Y or Z. And there's nothing, as far as I'm aware, in the education system. I went into my old school maybe about just before the pandemic, maybe. So maybe about two and a half years ago.
I love how you use that as a time.
Yeah,
It was about just before the pandemic.
But I remember I was speaking to the media studies teacher, and they don't teach about social media or media studies. And I was like,
what do they teach?
Like magazines and stuff still. And I'm like, it might have changed since, but I'm like, media are you they have kids doing these magazines. I'm like, how many magazines have we seen like go under?
Oh yeah.
Like it's not a viable career path really anymore. Like it's crazy. It's crazy. And like I think we just have to accept that social is here. It's a fantastic tool where you can, you know, connect with people. You can speak to your daughter who's on the other side of the world in an instant. You know, you can find out what people in a country are living their life like without even being there. You can watch a video. You know, it's fantastic. And yes, it is damaging, but so is every other invention that's ever been invented ever. Every other communication invention is damaging. You know. The media has been the media for as long as it has. Newspapers have spread lies for as long as they've been newspapers. But what we need to do as a society is work out like, what is this good for? What is this bad for? And how do we as a group how do we as humanity kind of quell the bad side of it as much as possible to really like hone in on the good side of it. Because it is a fantastic tool, and like it brings joy, it brings laughter, it brings sadness. Like I love social. I love it so much, and I just think we need to like work out how to stop the bad and how to amplify the good, because there's so much good on there.
So you mentioned that like your love of social media has brought you opportunities like doing a TED Talk. You were also listed in Vogue's 25 most influential women in 2018, which is another incredible achievement. What's topped it for you the past 9 years?
There's like so many cool things. I'm trying to think. One of the coolest things was being invited to speak at the NATO communications conference. I was like, NATO, as in like the world like military alliance. So it was like, right, okay, so I've got to go. And they paid me to go and speak at this thing, and I was like, this is just wild. It was in Poland, in Warsaw. And I just remember being there being like, this is insane. So we had like the ministry, I'm positive it was like the Polish Minister for Defense was there, and like this like head of NATO like follows me on Twitter now, and I was like, this is just like just the weirdest thing. I don't know if that's like the top, but it was just
one of those things.
One of those things, yeah. And I just remember I finished it. I had to do 2 talks in one day, and this just goes to show how much I haven't changed. So I did the first one, And then I went and I had a nap because I was just like, my adrenaline was like, whoa. So I just went and lay down for an hour and then got back up, did the second one. And just like, after that, sat in my room. I had like a burger and then I just like watched Anastasia. I was like, this is really weird. Like,
I think that probably sums up everything that you're about, which I love, which is really, really great. We always ask our guests that come on the podcast if you've ever had a big adulting fail, disaster, like something linked to like your time at Social Chain where you were literally like, I messed up big time, where it can be funny, it can be something you really regret. But like, I think what we want to talk about is like, everyone makes mistakes all the time, and that's basically how we learn.
Yeah, I've made so many mistakes. I'm trying to think. There's so many that I've like worried about and then I haven't like come into fruition.
Do you ever do that thing where you're sat and you start something and you're doing something completely different, then all of a sudden a worry pops into your head about something you said about 5 years ago that you have no control over?
100%.
I'm that person.
100%. I remember one time worrying for no reason. So I was speaking to someone at Facebook about some of we'd basically acquired, so Social Chain had acquired a gaming business which had gaming pages. Mm-hmm. And I was speaking to someone at Facebook about something separate. And for some reason in my head, after that call, it popped into my mind that like it's against Facebook's terms and conditions to like buy and sell pages, which is fine. However, if it's a company that you acquire as a company, obviously it's fine. But in my mind, I was like, oh my god, I was saying to Facebook how we'd acquired these pages, and I didn't sleep for like 2 nights, and it took such a while for me to be like, Hannah, it's fine. Like you're a business. Like you acquired another business. It's okay. Like. And
you thought you were going to get told off by Facebook.
I was like, they're going to shut all of our pages down. I was like, they're going to like shut the business down. I've like ruined everything. Nothing came of it.
Yeah. Are you an overthinker?
100%.
Can't tell from this conversation.
Like, oh my god. I was like, honestly, I was so like petrified, and it was absolutely fine. But yeah, so many times where I've like said the wrong thing, or done the wrong thing, sent the wrong email, and then just in adulting faux pas in general. Like adulting is really hard, isn't it? Like honestly, like the amount of times where like our spare bedroom will be piled high with clothes because we just haven't adulted. And it's like, it's just endless.
I feel you.
Honestly.
So much washing to do.
Honestly, putting the clothes away is just the worst. I hate it so much. But to the point where, so my mum stayed up hours last night. So she's on her way to go and see my brother. And she was like, she was like, I'll stop at yours. And obviously needed to sleep in the spare room, so I had to spend like 2 hours yesterday putting all of our clothes away. I was like, how does it get to this point?
I love it. Well, thank you, Hannah. It's been so lovely to have you in the studio chatting today. So much. Before you go, we always end our podcast by asking one simple question. And the question is, if you could look back at 20-year-old Hannah and give her just one piece of advice, you can literally pop up for a second and give her one piece of advice. What would you say to her?
Live true to yourself. Live true to yourself. Because I didn't for a long time.
But you do now?
But I do now.
I love that. Thank you so much for coming to the studio.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of the Talk Twenties podcast. I hope it inspired you in some way and pops a little pep in your step for this week. Got a spare minute? It would mean the absolute world if you could subscribe, leave a review, or share this episode with a friend. We're on a mission to help as many 20-somethings navigate their 20s as we can, and we really cannot do it without your support. We also love to hear from you. You can find us on all platforms via the handle @Talk20s. And if you're struggling with something in your 20s that we haven't already covered in the podcast, DM us and let us know so we can cover it in a future episode. And for more stories of inspiration and resources to help you make the best of your 20s, head to our website, talk20s.com.